Imagine that someone in your small hunter-gatherer band dies during the night. And by sunrise, everyone in the camp knows that person will never return. There are no hospitals, no cemeteries, no funeral homes, and no written traditions explaining exactly what should happen next. The group must decide what to do with the body, while also dealing with the loss of someone who may have been a parent, friend, hunter, or teacher. Today, death is surrounded by rituals, religions, and institutions. But ancient humans face the same reality with far fewer explanations. What makes this mystery fascinating is that archaeologists have discovered evidence showing humans cared about their dead long before the invention of cities or writing. Some of the oldest known burials date back tens of thousands of years and reveal behavior that feels surprisingly modern. Bodies were often placed in specific positions instead of being left where death occurred. Some graves contain tools, ornaments, animal bones, and other objects that appear to have been deliberately included. In certain burials, the dead were covered with red ochre, a pigment that seems to have held special meaning for ancient communities. These discoveries suggest that early humans were doing far more than simply removing a body from their living space. They were investing time, effort, and valuable resources into caring for someone who could no longer contribute to the group's survival. That choice raises an important question, because life in the prehistoric world was already difficult, and every resource mattered. Why would people spend precious energy on the dead when the living still needed food, shelter, and protection? Some researchers believe these actions reflect the earliest evidence of grief and emotional attachment. Others think they reveal the beginnings of symbolic thought and humanity's first attempts to understand mortality. Whatever the explanation, these ancient burials tell us something extraordinary about the human mind. They suggest our ancestors were beginning to think about memory, loss, and the meaning of life in ways that extended beyond immediate survival. The story of what ancient humans did when someone died is therefore not only about death itself. It is also the story of how humans began to see. For ancient humans, death was not an unusual event that happened only occasionally throughout a lifetime. It was a constant presence that shaped daily life and influenced how communities understood the world around them. People faced dangers that modern humans rarely encounter, including predators, accidents, disease, starvation, harsh weather, and violent conflicts with rival groups. A simple infection or minor injury that would be easily treated today could become fatal in a prehistoric environment. Children faced especially high risks, and many never survived long enough to reach adulthood. Even healthy adults lived with the knowledge that a hunting trip, a fall, or an encounter with a dangerous animal could end their lives unexpectedly. As a result, ancient humans became familiar with death from an early age. They witnessed the deaths of family members, companions, and community leaders throughout their lives. They also observed death constantly in the natural world because hunting, scavenging, and predator encounters exposed them to it on a regular basis. At first, early humans may not have practiced elaborate rituals when someone died. Like many social animals today, they may simply have remained near the body for a period of time before eventually moving on. Interestingly, several modern animals display behaviors that suggest a basic awareness that death has occurred. Elephants have been observed lingering near the remains of deceased relatives and repeatedly touching bones with their trunks. Chimpanzees sometimes remain beside dead members of their group and behave differently around them than they do around living individuals. Dolphins have even been seen supporting dead calves for extended periods, as though reluctant to let them go. These observations suggest that recognizing death may not be uniquely human. What appears to be uniquely human is what happened next. At some point, ancient humans stopped treating death as merely a biological event and began treating it as something with social and emotional significance. The dead were no longer simply absent members of the group. They became individuals whose bodies were handled with care and whose loss affected the people left behind. This transformation likely emerged gradually as human social bonds became stronger and communities became more interconnected. A skilled hunter was not merely a source of food. A parent was not merely another adult. A friend was not merely another member of the group. Each person carried memories, relationships, knowledge, and emotional connections that could not be easily replaced. When such a person died, the loss extended far beyond practical concerns. The entire community felt the absence. And it is within this growing awareness of loss that archaeologists begin to find some of the most remarkable evidence ever discovered about the ancient human mind. Because eventually, humans started doing something that would leave traces lasting tens of thousands of years. They began burying their dead. As humans became more aware of death, they may also have become more aware of something equally powerful: the mystery that followed it. Death creates a question that every human society eventually confronts, regardless of where or when those people lived. What happens when life ends? Today, there are countless answers shaped by religions, philosophies, and cultural traditions developed over thousands of years. Ancient humans left no written records explaining what they believed, but archaeology provides clues that suggest they may already have been thinking about this question. One of the strongest clues comes from the objects found inside ancient graves. In many burials, people place tools, ornaments, animal remains, shells, and other possessions beside the dead, instead of keeping those valuable items for themselves. From a purely practical perspective, this behavior seems difficult to explain. Resources were often scarce, and every useful object could contribute to survival. The repeated decision to bury valuable possessions suggests those objects carried meaning beyond their immediate usefulness. Some researchers believe these items represented the identity, achievements, or social role of the deceased. Others think they may indicate an early belief that some part of a person continued to exist after death. No one can know exactly what ancient humans believed, but the behavior itself reveals something important. People were beginning to think beyond the visible world. They were beginning to engage in symbolic thought. Symbolic thought is one of the defining features of modern human cognition, because it allows people to imagine things that cannot be directly observed. It allows them to think about the past, the future, invisible forces, imagined worlds, and abstract concepts. The moment humans began wondering whether death was the end may have been one of the most important turning points in intellectual history. For the first time, people may have started searching for explanations that extended beyond immediate survival. A person focused only on survival thinks primarily about food, shelter, safety, and reproduction. A person who wonders what happens after death begins asking much larger questions about existence itself. Why are we here? Where do we come from? What happens when we die? What gives life meaning? These questions would eventually inspire religions, myths, philosophies, and entire systems of belief across the world. Their origins may stretch far deeper into prehistory than most people realize. Even a simple burial may represent far more than the placement of a body into the ground. It may represent humanity's first attempts to understand something that could not be seen, touched, or measured. That is what makes these ancient graves so extraordinary. They reveal a species that was no longer concerned solely with surviving another day. They reveal a species beginning to search for meaning, imagine possibilities, and explore ideas that existed beyond the physical world. And perhaps the most remarkable thing these ancient burials reveal is not what they tell us about the dead, it is what they tell us about the living. The way ancient humans treated their dead reveals something remarkable about the way they understood life itself. A species concerned only with immediate survival would have little reason to spend valuable time, energy, and resources caring for individuals who could no longer contribute to the group. Yet, archaeological evidence shows that humans repeatedly chose to do exactly that. They buried bodies carefully, placed meaningful objects beside them, and preserved memories long after death had occurred. These actions suggest that ancient humans saw one another as more than sources of labor, protection, or food. They saw individuals whose lives continued to matter even after those lives had ended. That realization marks one of the most important turning points in human history. The story of ancient burial practices is not really about the dead. It is about the living and the emergence of qualities that still define humanity today. When humans began caring for their dead, they demonstrated that survival was no longer their only concern. They were beginning to think about identity, memory, relationships, and meaning. A burial preserves more than a body because it preserves evidence that someone once existed and that their existence mattered to other people. This idea may seem obvious today, but it represents a profound development in the evolution of the human mind. The ability to remember the past, mourn the dead, and reflect on loss changed the way humans understood themselves and their communities. It connected generations, strengthened social bonds, and helped create traditions that could outlive any individual person. Many archaeologists believe some of the earliest burials represent the emergence of truly modern human behavior. This is not because the tools became more advanced or because hunting techniques became more efficient, but because these graves reveal compassion, remembrance, grief, and respect. A stone tool can tell us how ancient people worked, hunted, or survived. A burial can tell us how they cared for one another. In many ways, that may be even more important. The next time you visit a cemetery, attend a funeral, or remember someone who has passed away, consider how ancient those behaviors truly are. The desire to honor the dead may stretch back tens of thousands of years into humanity's distant past. Long before cities existed, long before writing was invented, and long before history was recorded, people were already experiencing love, loss, grief, and remembrance. They cared for one another during life and continued caring after death through rituals that preserved memory and meaning. Those actions left traces that survived for thousands of years and allow us to glimpse the emotional world of our ancestors. Perhaps the most remarkable lesson from these ancient graves is that the moment humans began burying their dead may also have been the moment humans became fully human. Because when our ancestors started honoring those who were gone, they demonstrated an ability to think beyond the present, remember the past, imagine the future, and search for meaning in the mystery of life and death. And that may be one of the greatest transformations in the entire history of our species.